The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change (IPCC) met in Korea recently to discuss and release a report on our abilities to constantly fuck up despite being repeatedly asked, requested, urged, warned, cajoled, pleaded, and begged not to. And God was the conference boring. So boring. It began with the moderator bragging about his new bow tie.
And I am a little bit special. Many people offered me this papillon. And I said I will wear it for the special occasion, the great occasion. And this is the first time I am wearing a papillon.
And proceeded from there on. The report mentioned with high confidence that to prevent the worst effects of climate change, we need to reduce our net greenhouse gas emissions to zero in every sector of the economy by 2050 and reduce it to almost half in this very decade itself. But yeah, it wasn't accompanied by edgy music or sharp edits like in those dystopian films. Plus, there wasn't any CGI special effects either. So well, it's funny that almost every line of the report had a degree of certainty ascribed to it, whether something can be said with high confidence or medium confidence, and what's the evidence behind it. While the politicians and the godmen and those friends of ours who always have only one track agenda say everything with 100% confidence, irrespective of whether they are wrong, especially when they are wrong.
E equal to not MC square. Cannot be MC square. What is MC square?
Consider this glass. Let's say the water denotes the concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Presently, we are at 406 parts per million. Now, global warming occurs due to historically accumulated greenhouse gas emissions. Meaning, if we were to stop all greenhouse gas emissions today, still the impact of this will be in effect. Thus, when nations talk about the responsibilities of mitigating climate change, especially the cost of doing so, most nations like India, which didn't have the industrial head start, argue, but we weren't the people who created this problem. Our nations still need to catch up. It should be common but differentiated responsibilities. And they do have a valid point. But then it becomes a mudslinging match with rich nations crying unfairness.
The United States will withdraw from the Paris Climate Accord, but begin negotiations to re-enter either the Paris Accord or in really entirely new transaction on terms that are fair to the United States, its businesses, its workers, its people, its taxpayers. So we're getting out, but we will start to negotiate and we will see if we can make a deal that's fair.
And before you go all Trump bashing, it's not a new thing. The United States is known for its history of not following up on climate change treaties, citing American values and workers. The reason for this is a small little concept called per capita emissions. It's always prudent for them to talk of greenhouse gas emissions as a national concept, for it masks the reality of their unsustainable standard of living. Look at this map for per capita emissions in the year 2016, and you can predict the climate change denying nations with a ridiculous certainty. United States, Saudi Arabia, Australia. Annually, China is the biggest greenhouse gas emitter in the world, and India is the third. But then these nations also have the largest number of people in the world, which reduces their per capita emissions. Is it fair to have per capita emissions as the basis of climate change negotiations? Or put otherwise, is your life just as significant as someone else's life, that too in a different nation? Or worse, no nation? It's not such a straightforward question. But you can perhaps appreciate the shitstorm this creates in climate change negotiations and strategies. For greenhouse gas emissions aren't just a number you can cut down upon. It's the energy we need to lead our lives. It's the economy which keeps things running and always needs to be up, 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 even though the world turns into an oven with extreme weather events. Speaking of which, here's a question. We now have had climate change awareness programs for what? Over a quarter of a century now, right? What's the impact on fossil fuel consumption, do you reckon? Has it come down Is it now 25% less, one per each year? 10% less? Any change whatsoever? No. Now you may be tempted to argue about electric cars and windmills and solar panels, which are a sign for the future. And yes, they are. But they are nowhere near close enough to what we need. Let me reiterate. To be able to avoid extreme conditions as per the IPCC report, we need to have zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2015 and almost half by 2030. Electricity accounts for only 25% of the total greenhouse gas emission, and transportation is 14%, out of which less than half is cars. More emissions come from airplanes and cargo ships and trucks than cars. And let's be honest, you're not going on that world tour because you're climate conscious. You're not going because you simply don't have enough money. How many times have you actually avoided an exciting thing because it would increase your carbon footprint? That doesn't happen. Even our cattle produce more greenhouse gas emissions than the entire nation of India put together, twice over. And most of it through farts. And yes, going vegetarian, not cutting trees, and switching off lights and fans when not in use can help. But who are we kidding? Let's stop pretending that we care about our planet, alright? Let's stop it. We don't. Our ideals of status and fortune is someone having an around the world party where money and alcohol is pouring like there's no tomorrow. And just as well, for the emissions are so goddamn high that there will actually be no tomorrow. We don't care about our environment. If we really cared about it and wanted to do something about it, we would have changed the way we lived our lives by now. We would fund science, hoping to get innovations to help us address the entire gamut of greenhouse gas emissions. We would vote for people who would enact policies and legislations that would enable us to become a carbon-conscious economy. We wouldn't let the moral carcasses of nations ruin the entire planet for their own selfish reasons. We would do a lot more. Not just switch off lights and fans, pay lip service, and deliver platitudes. Am I hopeful? Well, my personal hero David Attenborough says we should be. So I am. But hope is perhaps the only thing fueling our spirits right now. That and some gazillion joules of fossil fuel. We are literally burning the planet and ourselves along with the remains of those long dead before us. I'll see you next time.